Good evening, Mr. Shivaraman. Welcome.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Shivaraman is a former Revenue Secretary, sir, from the Government of India, senior
Yes.
IAS officer.
Bhattru Mahatab Sahab, Namaskar. Bhavnesh here and Sushma here.
Namaskar, namaskar.
Namaste.
Namaskar. I'm unable to fold my hands because I'm holding the iPad in my hand. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
I think Corona has put everybody in the.
Yes.
It's testing everybody's limits actually. Sir. That is very interesting, sir. I mean, you know. I think maybe 2 months back you wouldn't have imagined you'll be doing this online programs around the time, all the time.
Not at all, not at all. This is something which has actually enveloped everyone throughout the world, which one had experienced, I think, 100 years back. We had influenza, we had plague, we had a number of other such contagious diseases. But now, this has come, perhaps the human race had believed that no such contagious disease ever existed, but just a invisible virus has put all of us behind doors.
True, absolutely true. So in spite of the technology and the knowledge and science and technology. So let me also introduce you, who has already joined us. Mr. Peter Remmel is a resident representative of India from Konrad Stiftung. It's a forum of the government of Germany, sir. He'll be delivering the introductory remarks. Then we also have Mr. Satyamurthy from Observer Research Foundation, ORF.
Yeah.
Prime Point Srinivasan doesn't need any introduction for you, sir. He's on. And Pankaj is head of programs with CAST, where we collaborate. We have been partners with them for the last 20 years. We do a lot of work together.
Yeah, namaskar.
And Mr. Sivaraman is, I mentioned to you, the senior Indian Administrative Service Officer, former Revenue Secretary. He is also joined. So we got lots of people who are coming in. So I can assure you, sir, we are going to have lots of questions today evening to address everybody's concerns.
People elect me to ask questions, not to answer questions. Yes.
No, I must really compliment you. Your articles about Financial Times, Hindu, and the Business Line. It's outstanding, sir. The thought on the labor reforms and your firmness in which the Parliament is going to really look into some of the issues, very appreciative, very interesting, sir.
So nice of you. So nice of you. Thank you.
Even yesterday, Finance Minister was making a reference about this.
Yes, he was mentioning about this 4 codes,
Yes.
4 labor codes which government has come up.
So live streaming started.
Started. Yeah, we'll go. Another 2 minutes to go. I'll start at 6 o'clock sharp. 1 minute to go, Shankar.
Yeah, please, sir.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, very warm welcome to another edition of our evening talk, evening series. And today's talk has been eagerly looked upon by so many, because so much of excitement. I got calls from many people who wanted to ask questions relevant to so many other than issues what has been impact on Indian economy. They want to ask more about labor, because the distinguished speaker, the honorable member of parliament, is also chairman of the parliamentary committee on labor. So all that you need to know, you could be answered. But as usual, before we move on, let me briefly tell you what's happening in MMA quickly next 1 week, so that you don't miss them. On the 20th of May, we are trying to organize your COVID-19 impact on commuting. We are trying to get some outstanding speakers, outstanding panelists to share with you how the commuting need to be handled post-COVID, actually. Be it you walk on your own, or be it train, be it bus public transport system, or own conveyance. So it's better to be knowing all this inner secrets from the specialists, so that you don't err on the wrong side to get into trouble. Then on the 21st of May, we're also celebrating the World Cultural Diversity Day. It's Unity in Diversity, the topic. It's a woman-centric event which you're doing. Dr. Sandhya Rajesh, she'll be talking to us, is a founder president of Avatar Group. and Dr. Bhavani Balasubramaniam is a diversity inclusive leader from Deloitte, will be with other panelists. On 23rd May, again, we are bringing to you an outstanding event at 11 o'clock in the morning. And because the evidence has clearly proved the balance sheet alone is not the brand value of the organization, there are much more of the company and institutions which drive the brand value. In this regard, we are going to bring you a series of events along with joining with Equator and with the support of Conrad Adler Stifting, and the series brand management series. The theme is your brand asset strong enough to weather the current global crisis? And we have an outstanding speaker on the inaugural session. We have Suresh Narayanan, who is the MD and chairman and MD of Nestle India Limited, agreed to come and talk. And we also have Dudi, who is a part of the Equator. Ramesh Jude is going to talking, delivering the team note address. This is happening on the 23rd at 11 o'clock in the morning, 11 to 12:30 this seminar. Then on 29th May, again, we have politics where we are bringing in next-gen leader to speak what is their views on the politics and why, how are they going to plan their growth in the politics, and what is their impediments, what they face, be it from the society, be it from the own party, be it from the senior leaders. How are they going to move forward? We are going to have a very serious discussion. We have got some outstanding parliamentarian where we are invited. We'll be sharing the list soon with you because still the confirmation awaited from some of them, and I'll share the detailed list. Then on the 3rd of May, again, we have an outstanding session on the electoral reforms by former Chief Election Commissioner T.S. Krishnamurthy is going to talk to us. In India, the world largest democracy, what is COVID-19 impact on Indian electoral system? And we have got a couple of other events too planned for you. Quickly in a minute, I'll finish you that. You all have been missing 20 lakh crore PM package announced by you. And we are going to have a series of things under the magnifying glass. This is PM economic package and different strokes. We are going to bring in some outstanding economists, top leaders, political leaders to come and discuss and see this issue of this economic package, how it is going to transform India in the near future and long-term perspective, actually. Because a lot of input has been is already announced by RBI, and some has come now, and various sectors are being announced by the finance minister every day. We are really identifying some outstanding speakers, economists from both from the government and also outside the government, so that they will come and speak to you. We're also going to bring you an event on air conditioning, because that is the only thing which has been impacting quite a bit, whether your air conditioning should be centrally thing. Most of the malls are not functioning. Some of the institutions where the central air conditioning, there have been restrictions put on them. So we are getting some expert to come and speak to you. We also written to some of the leading organizations, Blue Star and other companies, to come, their rep to come and speak to us, so that we all sure about how to handle some of the critical issues, what's happening out of the coronavirus. Coming to today's event, I mean, it doesn't need an introduction. We all know even the world war, what the world was, or 9/11, or we are all talking about black swan activities. And today we have got a clear definition of what it means to be a black swan activities, and we all going through the thing. And one such a discussion is what we are bringing to you under the Leaders Speak series, which we are doing jointly with Conrad Adler Stifting as a partner, supporting partner for us, along with ORF and also Young Generation Politics, YG, PAP, and 3 Cents, couple of other organizations, like-minded people are taken as a partner. And in this, we expect the leaders to share their insights on how India can push the boundaries and drive in post-COVID world order. And it has been our thing to bring in the other partners has been on a screen, 3 Cents and next-gen political leaders, and also ORF. Now, let me have the privilege, the format as usual is I will request Mr. Peter Rimlet to give introductory remarks. Thereafter, I request Prime Point Srinivasan to introduce a distinguished Honorable Member of Parliament. The Member of Parliament will be speaking for about 15-20 minutes, or the time is its convenience. Thereafter, he has agreed to address your concern, your questions on all the subjects, including finance and including labor. So feel free to share your questions in the chat mode. All the numbers which is coming to you in your live webcast, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, will be able to address your concern. Let me have the proud privilege of introducing Mr. Peter Rimmel, who is going to be delivering introductory remarks. Peter Rimmel is the current resident representative of Conrad Adler Stifting Office, India. He's got a law degree, and after a stint as a jurist, judge, lecturer, moved to public office, heads the division of the state of Ministry of Interior. He has a number of important assignments, including Anti-Corruption Commissioner of Republic of Indonesia. Earlier, he was a resident representative of Conrad Adler Stifting at Lebanon and Director of Rules of Law Program. Very warm welcome to Mr. Peter. May I request you to kindly deliver the introductory remarks, please. Over to Mr. Peter Rimmel.
Yes, thank you, Group Captain. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanakkam. I think it was only on Tuesday that Prime Minister Modi took to the airwaves to announce the much-awaited stimulus package that for weeks had sparked debate. With the corona crisis entering another month, the immediate, the medium, and the long-term economic impacts are starting to come into focus in countries around the world. And that means for governments mostly that they're spending more and also expected to spend more money on this. At the same time, revenue is going down. So of course that has impacts for maybe the inflation rate, the debt burden, all those things are coming up and getting clear more and more. Please let me welcome Mr. Bhartrihari Mahtab, whose record, I believe, speaks for itself. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your remarks on the state of the Indian economy. To give you some perspective on the issue, let me quickly lay out for you the state of Germany's economy and our political responses to the crisis. Perhaps it's partially German nature, but even before Corona hit, politicians and economists were expecting an economic downturn to hit us in 2020-21. So when Corona made our lives grind to a halt unexpectedly, Germans were at least partially prepared. Nonetheless, closures hit us hard. The federal government is currently expecting our GDP to contract by more than 6% alone in 2020 compared to the last year. And as might be expected, the service sector was hit hardest by the crisis. India, with its large informal sector, faces a similar, most likely even more challenging situation, as we undoubtedly hear in a few minutes from Mahtabji. Transport too, especially aviation, has been strongly hit. And again, there are similarities between the situations of Air India and Germany's flag carrier Lufthansa that they find themselves in, basically being grounded. Apart from the obvious reasons for the economic downturn heralded by the lockdown itself, in the long term, Germany will suffer immensely from the stop of international goods production and the breakdown of international trade links, as well as supply chains in the process. We are an exporting nation. We are not driven too much by domestic consumption, it's the export. And I say that with a characteristic German restraint, the export nation. As such, the production stoppages in countries like China leaves Germany severely constrained in terms of limiting our own capacity for re-export and manufacturing, as also for domestic consumption. Around the world, we have witnessed a political knee-jerk reflex towards more autonomy and reducing reliance on foreign goods. In fact, Germany's federal health minister has also suggested that Germany should repatriate important pharmaceutical production back to Europe. I think many countries have done similar. And there I'm not sure if then only China would be concerned or India as well. But this is an open issue. So far, it is a suggestion. This, I think, is a sensible approach and certainly a wake-up call for some in Germany who started to believe that the current international setup of global supply chains was beyond any reasonable criticism. Prime Minister Modi called it Atmanirbharta in his speech earlier this week. However, I must earnestly warn everyone who believes that now is the right time to seek refuge in dreams of national self-dependence as an answer to the crisis. Our global economy is unthinkable without the fine network of trade that spans the world. It guarantees our prosperity as well as a certain degree of international peace because of global economic interlinkages and maybe interdependence. We cannot risk that. Instead, I think that a balanced and comprehensive approach is best. Nationalizing or regionalizing strategic goods production, especially to alleviate dependency on one country alone, but at the same time, we should try to make our supply chains, which have turned out to be so fragile, fit for the future, for after Corona times, instead of destroying them. And if I look back in the past, economically, if we compare different economic models, countries who have been locked up and tried to do it all on their own usually have developed less progressive in their economies. They could supply less goods to their citizens than open economies. That is the experience. So one could only warn for going into these solutions entirely. I would like to quickly go over Germany's response to the crisis. Many of the measures will seem familiar to you. I believe as economically most countries around the globe have chosen a similar way to deal with the crisis. What differentiates Germany from others is the fiscal responsibility that allows us now to work with broad strokes. Ever since Angela Merkel was elected Chancellor in 2005, the Christian Democrat Union has pushed for fiscal responsibility at the federal and at the state level. There has been pronounced effort to reduce our yearly new borrowing and to balance the budget of the federal and state governments. While there has been a lot of criticism of the perceived fetish of a black zero, maybe I have to explain that that was the political agenda, to have no new debts but try to reduce the old ones. That was the so-called black zero. As well, called Germany, the fact that Germany has ample resources to draw from tackle the corona crisis now shows us that this approach was right from our perspective and for us. Just to mention a few specifics of the package deal currently in effect in Germany, as in India, its main goal is to prevent a deadly wave of defaults across the board. To this end, the federal government has put aside roughly 450 billion euros to aid the economy. This ranges from small direct assistance to keep struggling enterprises and even solo, self-employed and freelancers from defaulting. This amounts to around 50 billion in tax breaks. On a macroeconomic level, there is a stability fund of around 100 billion euro and further state guarantees of as much as 800 billion euros. It is worth mentioning that Germany operates a social security system whereby the state covers a part of the pay reduction for workers who have to go into short-time working. And this provides another lifeline on a more individual level. I think Germany could be calling itself happy to have such a social security network. You would not find these images of the migrant worker crisis like you would have seen it here, but it is in a more advanced stadium, and we can hope that such a network will exist in the future for India as well. So this response I mentioned was just the federal response. Like India, we are a federal republic, so our 16 states have also created their own responses, and that count to roughly 150 billion. Additionally, Germany contributes also, of course, to measures taken at the European Union level. So this was some kind of introduction how Germany is dealing with the issue, and I hope this complements the remarks we are about to hear on the Indian economy and lends in giving some international perspective to our discussion. So now I'm looking forward to the Indian side of things and hope that all of us at the end come out with good ends and good results.
Thank you, Mr. Peter, for your introductory remarks. I think the world has now come together to learn from each other. That's the only way we can kill this virus. Very, very important, great insight. Now, it's indeed my proud privilege to request Mr. Prayimpan Srinivasan. He's a good friend and well-wisher of MMA. He's the one who facilitated the introduction to the Honorable Member of Parliament. You all know Mr. Prayimpan Srinivasan knows, the Member of Parliament knows. I've been trying to bring him to MMA for the last 2 years, but today we are blessed indeed to have him with us. And just to, before I request Mr. Prayimpan Srinivasan to introduce formally our honorable guest for this evening, a few words about Prayimpan Srinivasan. You all know him very well. He's the chairman of Prime Point Foundation, and he also published a digital magazine, Presence, which is started on the advice of Honorable President of India, APJ Abdul Kalam. And he also instituted the most important and prestigious Sansad Ratna Award, which is also, we got it introduced on the advice of Honorable President APJ Abdul Kalam, and he's a digital journalist, a sound social worker, political actor, analyst. Now may I request Mr. Srinivasan to please formally introduce our guest.
Thank you, Group Captain.
Over to
Thank you, Group Captain. I'm really delighted to introduce our Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Badri Madhav. He's one of the legendary parliamentarians whom I consider. And you can compare him with any of the past great stalwarts like Kripalni, Masani and all. Now, we might not have, many generations might not have seen, but at least people can take up his YouTube and then see how nicely he presents. And he's the 6th time MP. He is representing Cuttack from Odisha. And he was it was a great honor for us to honor him with the Sansad Ratna Award for his best debating qualities. For 2-3 years, we gave him the Sansad Ratna Awards. He is one of the best debaters of 16th Lok Sabha, and now in the 17th Lok Sabha also is one of the best debaters. And he is a panel chairperson. Panel chairperson means that even the speaker is not available, he can preside over the Lok Sabha. In the absence of speaker, he is in the panel chair only. It is given only to the senior members or the knowledgeable members. And he is also the outstanding parliamentarian award he has received from the President of India. And the member from since 1968, he has been a member of parliament, and he has held various positions in various standing committees. Now in the 16th Lok Sabha, he was a part of the Finance Committee. In the 17th Lok Sabha, he is the chairman of the Standing Committee on Labour. Probably he has a greater role to play in the post-COVID. Probably many of the questions will be based on his new avatar as chairman of Labour Committee, Standing Committee on Labour. And he is also the member of the prestigious Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee is the committee which scrutinizes the CAG reports. He is a member of that. And he is also the member of the Consultative Committee on HRD. And he is a great literary person also on the other side. I am very happy to present Mr. Badri Madhav, a legendary parliamentarian, before MMA audience. Mr. Badri Madhav.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan, for this lovely introduction. I don't know whether I deserve that much of praise, but it is friends like you and others who have put me in this pedestal. I hope I will rise up to your expectation today. And coming back to the subject about which I would like to speak on, as you are all aware, India is going through a terrible or a terrific situation today, which is very extraordinary for all of us. None of us had ever contemplated that we will be encountering this type of lockdown, and this type of misery will befallen all of us, not only in our country, but throughout the world. It is something which was not at all conceived. Yes, as Mr. Peter had just now mentioned, that we were encountering some sort of slowdown in our economic activity. But at the same time, there were attempts also to make a turnaround. And it was going to hit us, but this pandemic, this COVID-19 has actually put all of us in great difficulty. I hope am I audible?
Go ahead, sir. Fine. Perfect, sir. No problem. Please go ahead, sir.
What has happened during last 8 weeks or so, we are not able to actually comprehend how long will this last. But in the meantime, because of the lockdown, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the whole country has come to a standstill. No production is happening. No work is actually happening. And this has actually created an atmosphere of panic throughout the country. Of course, government is doing its part. And as you know, we have this National Disaster Management Authority Act in place. Taking advantage of that act, the executive today is doing its best to tackle the situation. But the major problem which is confronting our country today is the economic situation. In initial days, in the second part of March, government had taken certain decisions and had provided some support to the, especially, basically to the downtrodden or to the poor, providing them that there should be no cause of concern relating to their food or fooding. So money was transferred to their account, and this could happen in a smooth way because we had this Jan Dhan account, the Jan Dhan Yojana, as we because of the steps that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi had taken in the 16th Lok Sabha time, that every person should have a Jan Dhan account, especially those who are entitled to have some support mechanism from the government, either it be the widow pension or the person who are old age pension or whatever is being provided, especially to the downtrodden people, the poor people of this country. So that account was connected. It was like the Jan Dhan account, the mobile facility, and also their account connected to, as it is called, the JAM, as it is mentioned, JAM. That has come as a boon today, because money could actually, 500 rupees initially was transferred to their account. Food, because most of our granaries were full to the brim. 3-month rice or paddy, rice or wheat was provided to most of them, and the state government played a greater role in providing that type of support. And another 3 months also has been added recently, as has been announced by the finance minister during her press conference. The best part is that yes, the government for the first time in this independent country of ours has become very conscious that no one should be in a position that he's starving, or there is, it had happened during the 40s, during the famine, great famine. It had happened earlier also in the 19th century when we were subjugated under a foreign rule. That time, large number of people had passed away because they were not provided adequate food. But that has not happened during last so many years, because the elected government or the popular government is more conscious that we will not allow a single life to be put to some difficulty because there is lack of food. Every government, be it the union government or the respective state government, is very much conscious about it. But the health services that is there, because of our long demand has not been met. People were always conscious that more investment should be made in the health sector. That has not been made. And this has become an opportunity of the administration that we should invest more on health sector. So large number of investment is being done, and that's a very good thing. And especially in the remote areas where the primary health centers are there, where community health centers are there, adequate facilities are being provided now. But of course, it is happening in different parts of the districts of more than, we have some 600 some odd districts in the country that is actually helping to a great extent. The best thing, another positive aspect is the Gram Panchayat institutions. Now they have been empowered. They are actually doing the great job today, because the health, the what is it called, as it is called, corona, it is called temporary shelters, where large number of people are coming back to their villages because they are bereft of any job. So there the quarantine centers have come up. But the other side of the situation today is lakhs and lakhs of people are walking back home. And here I would like to mention that because of our stringent labor policy or law, we were unable to look into that aspect that the labor of our country needs protection. We have hardly 7 to 8% of our labor force working in the organized sector. More than 92% of our labor force are working in unorganized sector. And whatever law has been framed both by the union government and also by the respective state government is for the basically is for the organized sector. Therefore, most of the trade unions also always vouchsafe for the organized sector. Very rarely they talk about the unorganized sector. And unorganized sector means, as for instance, now one part of it has come into existence and recognition is the Nirman Shramik or the construction workers. Because a cess is being collected from all building construction activities, now a heavy amount also is getting collected at the state level, and some benefit is being provided through that money to those Nirman Shramik or the construction workers. So this type of cess also was being collected for BD Shramiks and for tea plantation workers, for different other types of workers who work not necessarily in the organized unit, but they work for some months, for some period of time, and again go back to some other work. So today is the job which needs to be looked into is to how to bring into the labor fold all those unorganized sector people, that is around 90 to 92% of the workforce, and provide them social security. Government in the meantime has taken up, of course, this was a old pending report since 2002, that we have more than 44 acts by the union government, more than 150 acts by respective state governments. That means around 200 acts are in force in the country today relating to the protection of interest of the labor force. But I'm sorry to mention here, despite all these acts in force, very few are actually getting implemented. And that is the reason why our industrialization also has not taken up as it was expected. And the interest of labor also has not been protected to that extent as it has happened in different developed countries. The 4 codes which have been formulated by the government of the day, one code has already been approved by the parliament, that is code on wages in the 16th Lok Sabha, and 3 other code are before the parliament. Of course, 2 of the codes we have already deliberated, and this committee, standing committee on labor, has deliberated and have given its report to the parliament, and hopefully government will take cognizance of it and will bring it back to the parliament for consideration and passing. One more code, then those 2 codes are occupational safety, health, and working condition code. And the second code is the industrial relation code. These 2 reports are there before the parliament. Third code, which is before the committee, is the social security code, which is of course a very important. All the 4 codes are important. Actually, bringing all those 44 acts together and also improving on those acts has been the job of the government through these codes, and we have tried to improve further on these codes. I hope in near future, when the normalcy is restored and parliament comes into function, most of these codes also will see the light of the day and will help our labor force to a very great extent. Talking about the announcement that the Prime Minister has recently made about 20 lakh crores of rupees, it is a it is definitely a booster dose for our economy. And today we have heard for the third time, the third press conference of the finance minister. And I believe that, and it is my earnest belief that yes, these are the steps which was necessary, and also to build in confidence, and the steps that are actually being taken is of great importance and will help our economy to pick up and also to have a great impact. And India's, the word that is Prime Minister has used, Atmanirbhar, and I would like to add with that, self-reliance, as it is said in English, relating to Atmanirbhar, I would just like to add that we should also become Swavalambi, because that is another word of Atmanirbharshilata. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan.
Thank you so much, sir. You crisply everything so quickly. In fact, you covered all gamuts, and in particular the labor, because for impact on Indian economy, I think the labor is one which has played a very important role today. I think that has been so beautifully put together. I got a number of questions which has come from different sources. Asking you, sir. Initially, I will cover on the Indian economy and finance. Thereafter, I will take you to the labor, because there are too many questions on the labor issues. The first question has come from the YouTube viewer. Sharing GST funds among states has meant that manufacturing states get a bigger share than the consumer states. Is it equitable in terms of federal welfare state structure? What's your view on this?
Lot of debate has actually happened on this. Lot of debate before the GST came into existence. And I would not go into the details and take a lot of your time, but I would only say in a nutshell that yes, initially the impression was it is because GST is a consumer tax. So most of the consumer states will benefit because of GST, and most of the producer states, because on earlier version, it was the excise duty that was being imposed at the place of production that will go away. But a settlement was reached when Mr. Arun Jaitley was finance minister. Settlement was reached, and this was agreed upon that for the there has to be some sharing of the money that will accrue, and accordingly the producing states should not be at a loss, and it should not discourage the producing states to only become consumers and not actually produce things, because ultimately but one greater thing is one tax throughout the country. This was a dream which was achieved, and we have hardly have implemented it for last 3 years. And you have seen two big attack on our economy has happened. One was the slowdown because of the global situation that is prevalent today. Even today it is continuing. That has actually brought a tremendous pressure on our economy. And the greatest attack is now COVID-19. And this is not the time actually, because it depends. It has to be a collective decision of all the states, including the union government, to tide over this situation.
Thank you, sir. It's a question from ORF. Do you think there is a need for fiscal federalism in practice more than at present? If so, what are your suggestions for this?
At this point of time, I feel it is necessary that more money comes to the market. It is not, one should not be thrift. One should spend more so the market will become more active. So that is the reason why such amount of money from the government side is being invested. And so that market will revive, and accordingly, liquidity also will be there in the market. So in that respect, I believe that that is the right position. When the economy is slow, that time you have to have large number of liquidity. The impact would be inflation, and that inflation part needs to be looked into. And accordingly, so as I always joke about, that we have a thinking government. It thinks when it is standing up. So in that respect, they have to take some steps immediately. Every day, this monitoring is necessary. It's a tough job, no doubt, but it's a thinking government and it has to take steps immediately.
Yes, sir. Another question from our, again, a Facebook viewer, because there's a lot of things are happening post-COVID, the center-state relationship. In this regard, you want to know, there's an increasing feeling among states and also certain suggestions for bringing near exclusive state subject like health under the concurrent list. Your comments, please. I know a lot of questions going to come on labor on this concurrent issue later. This on the health issue, what's your view on this? Is it required to bring in the concurrent list at the moment?
No, as such, even today, why today? For last so many years, I would just like to fall back upon our decision when the constitution makers deliberately decided that education and health should be in the state subject. Land will be a state subject. Water will be a state subject. And these were decisions when the constitution was in the making. But during last 70 years, it has been found respective state governments were not actually investing that much in their budgetary mechanism on education and health. Rather, it is now the central government or the union government which has a big amount in the budget for human resource development or education, on health and family welfare budget is much more. And every government, every state government is looking up to the union government what program they have relating to education and also to health. In that respect, I would say, but the implementation part will be the state government. Union government cannot implement what type of education will be there in the district or in a taluk level or in the block level. Even the health sector-wise, the primary health sector and community health center can only be monitored and expanded at the state level. But finance-wise, because money is being collected by the union government in a much bigger way, share also is being shifted through different finance commission in a better way to the center, in a larger way to the center. In that respect, that sharing of money, especially for education and health, needs to be done in a bigger way.
Excellent, sir. So, there's a question from a young corporate professional from YouTube, sir. From Nehruism to self-reliant, now it's Modi's Atmanirbhar, meaning the same, sir. Is it a old wine in old bottle? It's all over again? What do you want this?
Yes, the words are not uncommon to us. Words are not uncommon to us. But during the Nehru's era, that time it was the commanding heights of the union government. It was the commanding heights of the union government where public sector undertaking came into existence. The government invested money to set up big industries. Subsequently, in the 90s, after the market economy took over and we made some relaxation in our license permit RAS, and we did a drastic change in most of our policy matters. Still, other things have remained, of course, but during last 30 years, since 91 till 2020, number of changes have been made. So in that respect, we wanted to become global. We wanted to look east, act east, and accordingly, our economy also expanded. We wanted to promote our brand. That is what our Prime Minister has been saying. It's not, think local and be vocal and also become global. So in that respect, we should not be dependent on other foreign products. We can produce here and also utilize that product in our market. I think that is the expansion of Atmanirbhar that the Prime Minister has been speaking of.
Thank you, sir. A lot of clarity. Now, this is the last question relating to the finance, then I'll move on to the labor sector. What stimuli do states need for economic recovery at present? In continuum, sir, they also want to know, do you think there's an equity in the spread of central funds among the states at present? There is always a sense of feeling among some of the states, their share of fund, what is coming in, is not adequate, be it from the same party or from the opposition party. But how do you balance it out, this sense of feeling between the center and the state, especially funding these concerns?
Now, if I talk about the federal structure, then being a regional party member, I would always say the center is not doing justice. But at the same time, I love my state, but I love my country more. So in that respect, I would say that whatever we have a constitutional mechanism in place, it is the Finance Commission which decides how much money is to be shared in which way. So this today, of course, the Finance Commission's report has not come. It has been extended by some months again. And therefore, I would expect that the Finance Commission's report is something which needs to be. But what I read today in the newspapers, because we cannot go beyond the Finance Commission, the share of the kitty that is always decided on certain parameters. But at the same time, when there was a great demand earlier, but I'd say during my last 25 years of experience in Parliament, we used to demand that why do you thrust certain programs on us, on our state, which is not required, and you are asking us to comply with that. And if you don't do that, that means we are not getting that much of support from the union government. So that's how the share has been increased to 44% of the collection that is being done. But even the schemes that are being announced by the central government, the money does not flow. Whenever it's like a give and take policy. Whenever the state says that you are not providing us money, the center always turns back and say you have not given us the utilization certificate. So it becomes a bureaucratic tangle actually there, where the state and the center always quarrel amongst themselves relating to utilization certificate not being provided, or the money is not actually being utilized by the state government, and state says that we have given it in time, you are not complying with it. But these are skirmishes which can be avoided when there is a direct contact between the chief secretary and the chief minister with the union government, and they should always be discussing amongst themselves and without putting the administrative mechanism into difficulty.
Thank you, sir. Very, very clear and about the content what you spoke. So the question from Mr. Miranda from New Delhi, and he wants to know, will the extent of Social Security Code 2019 as introduced in the Lok Sabha provide a firm legal and institutional framework for a universal right based on social security, covering the last worker within a stipulated time frame? Social security cushions in the form of unemployment benefits to workers have come to the aid of workers in countries, number of other countries where such a benefit exists during the pandemic. It is felt that the extent of the labor distress in India could have been obviated with to maximum account on some form of unemployment benefit are made available. What's your opinion on this?
The code actually does not say it in so many words for universalization of social security. That is our point of deliberation today, which we are doing. And if the idea is to provide social security to every worker, no matter is organized, unorganized, migrant or domestic or whatever, who broadly comes under the broad parameters of unorganized labor, it is necessary that social security is to be provided. For instance, I'll just give one instance to the honorable questioner, is that for health insurance or health services, these are two aspects. Whether government is going to provide health facility, health service to the worker, whoever he is, wherever he is, or his government can only provide, or the system can only provide a security of insurance, health insurance. These are two different things. So let us not confuse ourselves that providing health insurance through certain mechanism where it becomes, I believe, it is an individual liberty through which whether he wants to be part of the insurance coverage or not. But providing health service, which should become mandatory, where the employer, the employee, and also the government has to participate. So these are this is one aspect. There are a number of other aspects also relating to social security, which is necessary. And the tragedy of our country, of our nation is during last 70 years or more than 70 years of our independence, we have been more concerned about the organized labor. We have neglected our unorganized labor. And we have seen the fault lines during last 8 weeks when large number of people started walking back home. Those pictures have shown the pathetic condition of our workforce. This should not have happened had there been adequate social security measures. And this is a great challenge before the nation today.
Thank you, sir. In continuum, there's another question on the same subject. Do you feel that specific provisions for such social security cushions covering all workers need to be made in the Social Security Code, especially in the light of the current pandemic, and which is, so seriously impacted the migrant laborers?
I'm glad that because of the pandemic, these questions are now being asked. But let us look beyond the pandemic. What is the position of today of the workforce of our country? There is a need actually to provide social security, as I had said earlier, for all workers, for all labor force, wherever they are working. I would be more than happy if our farmers also, those who work in the farmland also, they are also covered under the social security measures. But something what one wishes and something that is implementable that needs to be looked into. We should go step by step. And therefore, in this social security code, certain steps have been taken by this government, and we want to improve on it. And as I always say, better is the greatest enemy of good. It is not bad which is the greatest enemy. Better is the greatest enemy of good. Let us first make the act, the code good, then we'll strive to make it better.
Super, sir. So the PM announced a lockdown at a short notice, with the situation demanded that then, sir. No thought was given about migrant labor, which were in lakhs that time, actually. After 45-50 days, industries and other establishments are being allowed to function. The center is facilitating the migrant labor now to return to their hometown, arranging a lot of trains and other mode of conveyance. Is it not incongruous at the moment?
I would say when the decision of the lockdown was taken, Prime Minister announced it. Some are debating that it was not the right time to do. But if you would have delayed it, then it would have exploded in a bigger way. That's what I believe. I think the Prime Minister took the right decision of the lockdown at that point of time. But what was expected is persons who were actually working in different cities or metropolis, it was expected that the industry will take care of those workers, especially those unorganized labor force. That was expected. So that was the appeal which was made by the Prime Minister and respective chief ministers also in their respective states. But because the factory was shut down, the employees wanted to go home, especially the migrant workers, they all wanted to go back. So and because there was lack of conveyance, no buses were plying, no trains were plying. So they started walking home. So that was a very tough decision when Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister said, I will send buses to bring back my migrant workers so that I can revive my economy when the lockdown will be open. And I will, because many of the unorganized labor, I would like to mention here, all were not unskilled workers. They were skilled workers. They were semi-skilled workers who had also migrated to some urban areas or metropolis. So when they are coming back to their states, especially in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, West Bengal, even to Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, most of these skilled workers or semi-skilled workers need to be employed in those states. This is a bigger challenge for those states, that how to engage them. And if they want to go back, where actually they were earning their livelihood, then they will wait definitely for a conducive atmosphere to come back. And I don't think in near future, say for instance, in another 5 to 6 months time, they may think of coming back if everything normalizes by December. But one interesting thing has happened in between, and that is in Haryana. Haryana government has started advertising that anyone who wants to come back, the government is going to provide them their travel fare so that they can come back, and it had opened an online system so that they can comply with. And very curiously, large number of people are also applying to come back to Haryana. So in that respect, there will be flow and counterflow. Migration going, it's an alternate migration also will take place. And India is famous for this migration. That's how our economy has flourished for last centuries, many centuries. So in that respect, but the problem is today, those people who are unable to travel in a normal way, they are being crushed by different vehicles on the highway. They are being crushed by the in the rail track. That is the tragedy which should be avoided.
So, and I think Mr. Siddharth asked a question, I think, which you were almost answered. You were wanting to know there's a lot of issues on migrant labor. Any state which you feel performed best in managing the migrant labor? You just now mentioned about Haryana. Is there any other state which could have done better, or your thoughts, your little bit of advice to these states how to manage?
I would say we have a Migrant Labor Act since 1979. Just imagine, we had a Migrants Labor Act since 1979. Still, we find, if you ask any government, be it of, because at one point of time, Tamil Nadu wanted to find out how many migrant laborers are there in Tamil Nadu. And subsequently, they had to withdraw. And this was a recent phenomenon in 2020. They had to withdraw, saying that it is not feasible actually to find out how long the migrant labor is there and how, for what point of, how many months he is going to stay, and how to calculate that. It was difficult because IIT Madras perhaps was doing that, and finally they had to withdraw. But today, if you ask any state government, even if you ask the union government, you will never know what is the actual number of migrant labor in this country. Because a person who goes to Bangalore or who goes to some other metropolis, he works there for 3 months and then comes back and becomes a construction worker. And after some time, when the harvesting starts, then he becomes a farmer. So he goes on changing his work. So in that respect, so similarly also is the migrant labor. A person who goes to Punjab, he might be going as a farmer to work as a farm hand in Punjab. Then he becomes a welder. Then he becomes a construction worker. So he is talented in, he has skill. So in that respect, sometimes some skill he has perfected himself, some skill he is still learning. So in that respect, it is necessary that from the states where the migrant labor actually goes, they should actually monitor them. They should have a proper list. And wherever they are going, that state government also should try to monitor it. But today, because of the technological advancement that has been made in our country, we can have a list. Because as yesterday, the finance minister announced about one very big thing, that one nation, one ration card. One nation, one ration card. That means any person who travels from Tamil Nadu to Delhi, or who travels from Uttar Pradesh to Coimbatore, he or she will be provided with one nation, one ration card. So in that respect, that's a good thing. Similarly, with this Aadhaar number, a person can be tracked wherever he is and what type of job he is doing. His account is there. His identity is there. So in that respect, this technology should be taken advantage of, and we can actually try to collate all the informations relating to migrant labor.
Great, sir. You really brought a great insight that migrant laborers, multi-skilled, multifaceted personality, they are really a very, very important factor in the growth of Indian economy and to come out of the pandemic. There's another question, sir. You are the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Labor. From that perspective, what's your comment on some of the state extending working hours for labor? In continuum, they also want to, in this context, do you think there's a need for a constitutional protection for the rights of the labor in these countries?
That could have been done by Dr. Ambedkar himself in the initial years of our independence, but it was not done. It was not done for various reasons. But actually, India is a signatory to ILO. And ILO in 1919 had agreed that of the division of the time of a person. So 8 hours was there that he should work. 8 hours is that he should rest, and 8 hours that he should engage in different other activities so that he leads a perfect life. What has happened is, during last 100 years, number of I would say technology has come into the industry. The industry of 1919 or before that was something which is of the past. Now there are, say, take for instance the textile industry. The textile industry of 1919 or before the First World War was more on a manual level, and therefore you needed a manual labor in a textile industry. Today in a textile industry, it is very automatic, very technical, and you don't have to use your hand to run a machine. So in that respect, the time that was actually allotted in 1919 for a labor to work, the labor himself wants to work for more time, to earn more. So in that respect, don't restrict that labor to work for more and or to earn more because of some agreement which was there 100 years ago. In our report on working condition, health and occupational safety code, we have suggested that there are certain industries where flexibility relating to the time can be worked out, but it has to be done with the consent of the labor. With the consent of the labor. Definitely, I'm using it with the consent of the labor does not mean with the consent of the trade union.
Great, sir. So encouraging to hear from the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Labour. In continuum, sir, I think some of the thoughts which has come really made the state to do this is a lot of companies are leaving China, likely to come to India. Maybe this is one of the reasons they want to accommodate as much as possible to meet the requirements of this company which are going to come into India. Is it got any correlation to this? Some states ministers have pointed out this in their conversations.
That is perhaps a point to discourage any change in our labor law. I would say those who are migrating from China, they have already gone to Vietnam. They have already gone to Bangladesh, where labor law, of course, is comparatively flexible. What we should do in our country to make the labor law little bit flexible, so that will attract foreign direct investment, of course. Of course, today, those who are coming out of China, not necessarily they are all coming to India for various other reasons. They are also thinking of investing in some other country where they can reap the benefit. But our attempt has been to have our own indigenous talent to be utilized and our own finance to be invested. Of course, FDI is something which is really required to give a boost to our economy.
There's a question from a common man, is Mr. Srinivasan from IOD. He says, sir, I'm happy that Government of India bringing lots of schemes, especially for downtrodden people. My worry is how it is going to disturb our economy, especially inflation, fiscal deficit, and what will happen to middle class, retired, non-pension persons like us. What is the precaution such person should take now to get into deep trouble? It will be worse than the migrant laborers.
That's a very big question. I think the whole budget needs to be looked into. But I would only answer to that in part is there's, yes, every popular government is conscious about the last man in the line, the last person who is there. because that's how the present government is looking into the aspect. During last, Prime Minister's announcement and subsequently Finance Minister's pronouncement during last 3 years, 3 days has been specially relating to this aspect, that how money will come into the pocket of a common man.
Great, sir. There's a question from a professor from Anna University, Mr. Gopal. He says, sir, the principles of localization as simple living and I thinking as the basis act. Will India quickly move on to the knowledge workers ideology? And what's your take on this?
I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. Yes.
Professor, you should be happy with this. So there's a question on over the past 2 decades, a new outsourcing industry has come into work. That is, it covers almost the entire gamut of industry sector, including the PSUs. For instance, onboard food on trains are handled by the outsourced contractors. In offices to canteens, housekeeping, even the large-scale cooking work is done by the outsourced workers. Was it a healthy way to do things? Is it war? If not, how to apply the correct industries in the COVID world?
I can only say, as in Chennai, you have a lot of overbridges, flyovers. Where there is a congestion, you construct a flyover so that you shift the congestion from one place to another place. This outsourcing is like a flyover, because regular employment was not thought to be fit for that company or for that firm. They thought that let us outsource this, so that responsibility relating to different provisions in the labor law can be avoided. So in a way, this has forced this large number of outsourcing, which is practically the unorganized labor. That's how it has mounted to 93 to 94% in our country. And that is the reason why we have to bring all those unorganized labor force into the social security measure, into the law fold, so that labor law, so that it will benefit them.
So there's another question for one of YouTube viewers, sir. For close to 4 decades, we have Migrant Labor Act, which now seems to have been followed only in to breach by many states. Why should we allow such a situation to happen when you know that so many laborers are contributing to the growth of Indian economies?
I think I have answered that question already.
Yes,
I've answered that question already, because it all depends, because law is there on the paper. It is the robust implementing agency that will actually help in enforcing that law. If the enforcement agency is not strong enough, then it will never help if you have it in the book.
Great, sir. So there's a question from one of our members, he wants to know, in social media and mainstream media, there's lots of anxiety and curiosity with regard to the sharing of the expenditure toward the cost of tickets of the laborers. Could you face some light on this? Why the people are so hesitant to share the cost when so much is being done to the people to repatriate them to the respective states?
Sorry, I couldn't follow this question.
There is a social media scrutiny on the expenditure incurred by the receiving states or the state from where the migrant labor are moving on the travel expenditure in terms of train or other modes of it. Why
Yes.
the governments are reluctant to actually share this expenditure, but which is to be comes out of anyway from the funding which is allocated towards under which fund it's coming in.
It's a RTI work, or it's a RTI through a RTI work. But I feel ultimately, say for instance, the train that are actually as it is called Shramik Express, those who are bringing the migrant labor from one state to another, that expenditure also is being shared by the railways. And the expenditure, of course, because we are in war footing now, it is not advisable to ask for the accounts at this point of time. Everything will be accounted for, no doubt, will be accounted for. State governments, the expenditure that they are making, it will be accounted for. Public money, wherever it is being spent, is always accounted for. That's why we have a mechanism of Comptroller and Auditor General.
Super, sir. Yes. So there's again a question from a middle income group. What he wants to know is, Given the current economic scenario and the problem being faced by the middle class, do you think there is a case for the government to pass on the benefit of reduction in the crude oil price to retail consumers? This would in turn put more money in the hands of the common man and push consumption of another product services. I think it will do anything much better than the short-term measures like reduction in TDS, which is only a small group of people get affected.
Of course, there are two sides to it. It depends on which side of the table you are sitting.
Yes. On one hand, we want to control the fiscal. Yeah, please go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
If one is with the government, then they will always say that where from the government will get the money. And as at one point of time, the former prime minister, during his tenure as prime minister, had said, money does not grow on trees. So in that respect, money has to be collected, because with the fall of revenue in this pandemic time, it is necessary that some money has to be collected from different sources. I wouldn't be surprised that in near future, government may impose a cess on certain items to collect more revenue, as it had happened in 1971 because of the refugee pressure. Mrs. Indira Gandhi had imposed refugee tax. Stamps were also there. Extra 5 paisa stamp was on every postal order. So in that respect, something will happen. But the other thing is the general perception, the logic that always has been put forth by the government is because of the crude price in the world market, that's why the price has risen. That government should come out very clearly that it is not actually the crude price that is determining our market price on petroleum products in our country. It is the revenue generation mechanism that has forced our hand. They should come out very openly and say that.
Right, sir. I got another 10 minutes. I'll squeeze in as many questions as possible. Very rarely we get the presence of the chairman of a labor from
Right.
parliament. I will ask as many questions as possible because there's a lot of concerns among the people on these issues. So there's a question from Mr. Narsimulu. Many decades of migrant labor are great forced and respected by each state growth. The prosperity was contributed by them. But why clear and continuous registration and empowering these migrant to upskill and make them entrepreneurs and make them the sense of belonging to the state has not been initiated by countries like India, where it should have been done. One nation, one policy is coming in now.
Actually, I would give you two instances. Say from West Bengal's Murshidabad, there are skilled workers who have come to my constituency, to my city, to Cuttack, to build underground drainage system. And they have the skill. We have tried to actually educate our skilled manpower in our city so that you work with them and understand how they are doing it. And in this time, they want to go back to their Murshidabad and it has become a Herculean task actually to convince them and to make them stay. Similarly, large number of plumbers from Odisha, from one specific district called Kendrapada, they go around the country, even to the Middle East countries, to the Arab countries, to work as plumbers. And in that respect, this is a specific skill which they have acquired. Our attempt would be that if we have a social security coverage, that wherever they go, they should be provided this type of security. So in that respect, that will be a great thing. And to a certain extent, whoever is engaging them, it is responsibility of that contractor. It is the responsibility also of the government. So it becomes a tripartite agreement.
Super. The question from Mr. Shivaraman. The Migrant Labor Act really puts a onus on the employer to get license and also register the people whom he has hired. There is a joint commissioner in charge in the state who regularly checks these documents. How can the state now say that they don't have information on how many migrant laborers actually they have? I think this is
because the commissioner never checks. and this license holder of the contractor is so cumbersome. If you go through that act, that if he has a license of 20 employees and 2 of them go away, and he engages another 2 persons in that place then he has to again get the license from the government. It is very cumbersome. That's why many contractors avoid the license and are eager to pay the penalty if at all it is imposed. And rather, you understand how everything is managed.
Absolutely true, sir. The question from Mr. Raman, sir. He also says, we are all blaming the migrant laborers. It is an inability of the state to make them, to accommodate them, provide them the comfort. It indicates clear the state ministry always worried about creating wealth for themselves. It is inward looking. Is it correct in a democratic country like India?
Yes, it is the responsibility of a welfare state to look after every citizen of the country. And that is the reason why the government of the day is actually engaged to bring the unorganized sector into the social security measure. The other code on wages also was one of the very revolutionary steps that the government has taken. What I understand is, with these 4 codes in place, government, when it will be coming with the rules and regulations implementation part, it will bring a drastic change in this country.
There's a question from Shweta, sir. She wants to know that, sir, please comment on the role of WHO and the China in flouting the misinformation which led to the rest of the world to be underprepared to deal with the pandemic. This has been discussed in many platforms. What's your personal view on this, actually?
My personal view is, perhaps being a world organization, WHO, was perhaps not aware what was happening in China, was misled by China. This is my opinion. I may be wrong, but I would not blame WHO for that. And the mechanism through which WHO has been formed, it needs little improvement.
Excellent, sir. Very balanced view, sir. Now, Mr. Siddharth Sampson, he was wanting to know, sir, 1 or 2 revolutionary labor reforms ideas, which you want to know, being a parliamentarian for 6 times, seen so much of thing, both the state and central level. What should be 2 revolutionary labor law reforms which you want to bring it on force, which you're already doing on 4 of the major laws, actually? Yes.
Frankly speaking, I've been very new to this labor aspect of our parliamentary activity. I was never involved in labor aspect, and I'm trying to learn every day relating to the labor law and also the issues relating to labor. We have academicians who actually go into the specific aspect of it. But with my limited knowledge, I can only say labor is a component and another is the employer or the capital. That is the another component. We have to maintain a balance between the two to make our country progress. So unless a balance is maintained, nothing can happen. I cannot be only talking about the interest of the labor. I also have to think about the industry side, the organizations or the firms or the units that are providing employment to the labor. So in that respect, that balance is necessary. And I can expand that a bit by saying that yes, there has been certain type of imbalance. That's why we have large number of unorganized labor force in our country. Most of the developed nations don't have this type of imbalance. That this imbalance should go. Our attempt should be to bring in a balance between the capital and labor.
Great, sir. With all the humility, you shared your insight. There's a question from Mr. Uday Shankar. It's been very encouraging insights on all the aspects which you shared so far. Just curious to know and want to understand that in spite of so many favorable policies for women, labor forces establishing is not compiling the law, and hence there is urgent need to renew the gender sensitization among the people. So why the women force really suffer in terms of labor deployment, more so in the manufacturing sector?
No, it goes with our mindset. Basically, the general perception in our society is that a male person will be more easier to tackle than a woman because it comes with them with a lot of other issues. But what we have done in this second code, that report we had given, we have expanded the working hours of the women also. They can also work after 7 p.m. in the evening. So in that respect, they have to provide, certain facilities have to be provided to them by the person who is engaging them. So in that respect, slowly that ice is breaking and no more labor is confined to the male folk.
Great, sir. I will try and squeeze in another 2-3 questions before we let you go, sir. I know you're taking a lot of your time. So there's a question from one of our viewers on YouTube, a very serious question. Do you think there is a case for bringing migrant labor care also under the supervision of State and National Labor Rights Commission, for them to produce an annual report to guide and advise the central and state governments on these sectors?
These are very positive suggestions. These are very positive suggestions, and it is necessary so that you make the state on the part of the state to make it mandatory, so that it comes into the public domain. Discussions can take place at different platforms. It is a positive suggestion.
So one of the members want to know that some of the states are taking advantage of the Disaster Management Act by amending the thing to suit their requirement. So how do you contain them? The Disaster Management Act gives a lot of powers to the state, but when they go outside the, how the center is planning to intervene, especially in the segment of labor, which is very important.
No, what has happened now is, because of the National Disaster Management Authority Act, taking advantage of that act, number of changes have been made. And I don't question their legality, because legally a state is empowered to, because this is an emergency-like situation where certain drastic steps needs to be taken. But these steps can only be taken for 3 months. After 3 months, the process is, or within 6 months, the process is that it has to be passed in the assembly or in the parliament. So in that respect, it has to get the sanction of the legislature. And after the sanction of the legislature, then everybody is free to go to a court of law to challenge that decision. So that's why I have been saying, but no matter what type of decision has been taken by the government, it is an executive decision. It has to get the sanction of the legislature. Ultimately, it has to be, it will be scrutinized in the court. Then only one can say, yes, this is the position of that law.
Super, sir. One last question before we let you go. Now, sir, another major issue is the exodus of migrant workers. Now the trade unions are keeping a close scrutiny on this, and they want a policy of migrant workers, and that Interstate Migration Workers Registration Employment Act Condition Services, which is a part of the 1979 Act, should not be merged with the Occupational Safety Code. What do you know this? Because it will become
it has merged. It has been subsumed to that code. A number of provisions also has been in a part of that code. That has actually made that code more vibrant. I would expect that the suggestions that our committee has given will be actually accepted by the government. They can also, and even Parliament can also further improve on that issue.
One last question, which I think it has come. I don't want to
I hope this is the last.
Yes, because the questions, there's so much of excitement among the people, because to hear from you gives a lot of confidence, especially the people who are running the businesses and also the laborers. No, sir, there is a number of minimum order under Industrial Dispute Act, which has been 100, which is there. Now the government want to make it 300, but the trade unions are seriously not agreeing to this. What your views are? We personally feel the 300 will really create more job opportunities, but why should the trade union should be objecting to this? Maybe you are dealing with a large number of them. Can you throw some light on this issue actually, which is really concerned the entrepreneurs and MSME owners?
As the chairman of the committee, I not only deal with a large number of them, I also deal with variety of them.
Top jobs.
So there has been always the trade unions have been opposed to enhancement of this number of employees from 100. Where from the industry side, they were saying raise it to 1,000 or 500 like that. We have recommended that it should become 300. Government is of the opinion that instead of union government taking a decision on it, let us allow the state government to finalize it and let us leave it to the state government. Some state governments like Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh have already implemented it. And we wanted to understand, we wanted to study that what has been the impact. And the impact has been very encouraging. That once the 100 was lifted to 300, the employment, the allegation was the employment will be lessened. Number of employment will come down, but just the reverse has happened. More number of people got employment. More number of units also started functioning. That also gave rise to more employment. So in that respect, the impression that at certain time the trade union gave is actually not very conducive for the interest of the labor force, I can only say. And of course, they understand it privately. Some also say that, yes, this is the right approach. But I think today it is time that we have to be flexible in our labor law. The rigidity has not helped us during last 70 years to increase our employment structure, to actually protect our labor interest to a great extent. I think the next phase has come where we can go in for flexibility. But at the same time, we should also be very aware, very conscious that no interest of labor should be trampled for the interest or to pamper a specific section of the society.
So encouraging to hear from Honorable Member of Parliament, Standing Committee, Chairman of Standing Committee Labour. I'm quite sure that the law which is going to come enacted in the course of time, it will be pro-management as well as pro-labour, and that is what is really the balance the act is doing. And Mr. Peter Rimmel or Pankaj or Satyamurthy, you got any final last question before we let the Honorable Member of Parliament leave? The last choice to you, because being a partner, it's a privilege. Do you have any questions, sir? Yes, Mr. Peter Rimmel, please go ahead, sir. Yes. We're not able to hear you, so unmute yourself, please. No, we're not able to hear you, sir. Shankar, can you check? Shankar, you're online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Peter Rimmel is not, we're not able to hear him. He's not.
The audio is available. You can speak now. Peter, sir?
Please, sir, please go ahead. No, we're not able to hear you, sir. Yeah, now unmute, sir.
No.
In the meanwhile, maybe I can ask something.
Yes, please go ahead, Pankaj. And meanwhile, we'll set right Peter Rimmel's.
Mehtab sir, what a pleasure and a privilege to have heard you and
it is my pleasure.
Such articulation of difficult issues. Mehtab sir, we had 91 as a turning point in a sense, with economic reforms initiated, but thereafter it has been a little bit incremental reforms, bit by bit, not really too effective. Till about 6 years ago, then we had this GST, which was a big bang one, and then bankruptcy code and so on. And now I have the sense that the government is ready to bite the final bullet of reforms, and that is the land and the labor reforms.
Yes.
Would it be growth at any cost? Has sustainability factor been taken into account?
It would have helped us to a very great extent. But you can also remember, since 1991, we continued with fractured mandate in the country for quite a long time, for 25 years. It was only in 2014 that we could get a robust mandate in the union government. Of course, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the initiator, one can say, along with Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, to bring in a drastic change in our economic policy in 90s. He was Prime Minister for 10 years, but he was heading a government which was pulled from different sides. It was, and still he had some courage to say that we need to go into the second phase of our reforms. And but I felt sad when he made a comment very recently about the economic situation of our country and the steps the government has been taking. But I feel this is the right time. An attempt was made in 16th Lok Sabha to bring in land reforms, which was negated. And but I think it is necessary to come into the second phase of our reforms. Labor, of course, will be a very revolutionary.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to Peter Rimmel again. Sir, can you try again? Let me see whether your audio has been set.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, so you spoke of the imbalanced labor market. Now, coming from a country where you don't have such imbalance, where you hardly don't have any informal sector at all, all is formalized, I agree when you say the labor market needs some flexibility, of course, meaning liberalization. And I'm sure what you described, you don't need a Manchester liberalism. The state, on the other side, of course, has in its synchronizing function to look that not only the economic aims of the enterprises are there, but also society's broader goals can be achieved. So I'm asking, my question is twofold. The one is, what should the government on the one side and the enterprises on the other side do to get this imbalance out, to get more people into the Providence Fund, into the formal sector? And now the second part, maybe what could they do realistically in the moment, in the short term?
In the short term, actually, the 4 codes that are now actually being deliberated in the parliament today. 3 reports, already 1 has been cleared, as I said in the beginning. 2 are in the parliament for the government to come forward. And the 3rd one relating to social security, that is now we are deliberating. And this will actually encourage the enterprise to bring in the unorganized sector into the organized sector to a very great extent. Why this unorganized sector has flourished for last 70 years is because of the stringent labor law. And with that stringent labor law, we have, as it has always been said in our country, the license permit Raj. We have too much of Inspector Raj in our country. That has actually dissuaded the enterprise to move away from the Organized Labor Act, which actually protects the organized sector. So in that respect, I feel once we remove the Inspector Raj, once we remove the license permit Raj, we have faith in our entrepreneurship, we have faith in our labor, then only we can avoid unorganized labor. But I would also like to add, we cannot wish away the unorganized labor in one go. It will be a gradual process, and accordingly, it will be done.
Thank you so much, sir. And it has been a fascinating evening, and spending that 1.5 hours with you is so much of insight and knowledge, and since it gives so much of confidence for the people who watch that the reforms, what is going to happen, is going to be balancing between the labor as well as
it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure.
Thank you, and may I request all the participants please a show of appreciation to the reaction, your applaud, and thank you so much, sir. It's been a great evening.
Thank you.
Once it improves, we look forward to your presence in Chennai to present you before a large audience who are really eager to looking forward to hearing you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Peter, for joining us this evening, Pankaj, and also other team from CAS, and Satyamurthy. You have been a great source of support as always. Thank you so much, and from ORF, Bhavnesh, and a lot of other people, Ashish, Gupta. I'm seeing so many of them on the screen. My personal thanks to all of you for making this event thing. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you so much, sir. Would you like to say final words, sir? Mr. Bhattacharya?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this splendid evening. Thank you very much.
Good night, sir. Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.